everyone. My name is Allison Wyckoff, and I'm the Associate Director of Public and Community Programs here at the Asian Art Museum. And it is really my great pleasure to welcome everyone tonight. We have a great program. It's the last At the Table series of the summer. It's also our last Thursday evening program of the year. We will be hibernating on, come August 29th, and we'll reopen our late Thursday evening program in January of 2020. So we'll see you then. So thank you all for coming tonight. We've got a great program with Tim Archuleta of Ichi Sushi and Isaac Fitzgerald, the author of this incredible book, Knives and Ink, chefs and the stories behind their tattoos, and it has recipes. Tim and his wife and partner Aaron founded Ichi Catering in 2006 and launched their first sushi bar, Ichi Sushi, on Mission Street. It's still there, the food is delicious, and it's one of the most coveted reservations in town, so if you haven't been there, I highly recommend going. Isaac has a storied history working on a boat, as a firefighter, and as a baby chef or wannabe chef under Tim. He used to host a morning radio show on BuzzFeed and is a prolific author, currently working on 3 books, one of which is part of the tattooing series along with Knives and Ink. This book is available for purchase in the museum store, so please go pick one up before you leave tonight and get it signed by these guys. So this summer's programs have been inspired by the exhibition Tattoos and Japanese Prints, which is part of San Francisco's Year of the Tattoo in Museums. Tattoos have had showing at different museums like the Contemporary Jewish Museum, the Fine Arts Museum with Ed Hardy's retrospective right now, here at the Asian Art Museum, the Midway Gallery, and at the San Francisco Art Institute this fall, which will have an exhibition of former students who are now tattooers. So that'll be a cool one that you won't want to miss. This is a great step forward in recognizing tattooing as culture, and it's exciting for the Asian Art Museum to be a part of this movement to bring greater awareness to tattooing as an art form, as well as Japanese tattooing in the West and ukiyo-e culture in general. The exhibition closes on Sunday, so please go check it out if you haven't already. We're open until 9 tonight, and then again tomorrow through Sunday. In addition, there's 2 other incredible exhibitions downstairs, The Bold Brush, 8 Chinese ink paintings by the artist Oh Han Mien, and an incredible site-specific large-scale bamboo installation called Connection by the artist Chi Ku-unsai, and that one's harder to find, but I highly encourage you guys to go seek it out. Lastly, silence your cell phones, and please no video recording tonight. We are taping the program, and we'll post it on our YouTube channel in the next couple of weeks. So without further welcome, please help me welcome Tim and Isaac. Thank you.
All right. Come on, give it up for everyone that worked so hard here at the Asian Art Museum. Come on, give it up for them. They put so much into making these programs happen. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Isaac Fitzgerald. This is Tim Archuleta. He's an amazing, incredible... Yeah, clap for Tim.
Clap for me.
They made a mistake by giving us a bunch of Japanese whiskey, which is going to be fun. But I wanted to just get started. Like, Tim, could you just tell us, we had a brief introduction there, but just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Just to make it clear, I am not Japanese. I know you guys are all wondering with the last name like Archuleta. I'm the part owner, and executive chef of Ichi Sushi in San Francisco.
Yeah. And you're originally from Sacramento, is that correct?
Originally from Sacramento, yes, but do not hold that against me.
And if we're going to talk, lineage, I believe if I'm remembering correctly, your parents, or at least one of your parents, is Mexican American.
Yes, my mom is Mexican. My grandfather and grandmother both Mexican, and my father is Basque. We have gotten the ancestry DNA, so it's true. He actually is Basque. People say, what is Basque? Basque is a region between Spain and France in the Pyrenees Mountains. They make delicious food. I don't have a lot of in-depth, in touch with my Basque side, nor my Mexican side. To be completely honest.
I think you lined me up for what I was.
To be completely
I
honest.
was basically about to ask is, so how did a Mexican kid from Sacramento become one of the best sushi chefs in San Francisco?
Oh, my wife loves this story. She does. So I grew up in a household, I grew up in the restaurant industry. I've been working in the restaurant industry since I was 11 years old. Started bussing table at my dad's restaurant. When I was going to college, I think I majored in hacky sack, I think was, I was going to college and in Santa Cruz to the JC, and there was a girl who really loved sushi. So I decided I was going to become a sushi chef.
I'm going to go down a limb here and say this is not your wife, Erin Archuleta, co-owner of Ichi Sushi.
No, it is not.
We're talking a few years ago now.
We're talking in 1996. That's when I started making sushi.
And so what happened from there?
I started making sushi at a restaurant called Paradise Sushi in Capitola. I learned from a bunch of people who kind of knew what they were doing, and this is not to be offensive at all, but they just were making mostly rolls. They didn't really have a whole lot of training themselves. And I kind of noticed that after a while, so I figured to further my career, I was either going to have to move to San Francisco or New York or LA, and San Francisco, just by proximity, was really close, so I ended up moving to San Francisco and to get a job making sushi.
And is that where you met basically the person that you would credit with teaching you how to make sushi?
So
and you can tell us a little bit about him.
This is a crazy story. There was this Japanese food distributor. He was my sales guy, and he owned a restaurant in San Francisco, and he wanted to make his very traditional Japanese restaurant into a more of American sushi restaurant. So he hired me to come and run his sushi bar. Me being 23 years old, only making sushi for maybe 9 months. So it was me running the sushi bar and a Japanese chef who did the rest of the food. He didn't speak English, I didn't speak Japanese. Let's just say I lasted 3 weeks.
And then?
Well, when you're 23, you know it all. And then I realized really fast that I didn't know anything, especially about sushi.
So where did you come by your knowledge? Where did you learn?
So I was working there, and there was a customer, and she came in and said, hey, we're looking for sushi chefs at this restaurant called Ace Wasabi's in the Marina, and they're opening another restaurant called Tokyo Go-Go in the Mission, and they're looking for chefs. We're 3 years behind in construction, and we're still looking for chefs. You should come and grab an application. So I got an application, I went in, got an interview, sat down with my chef. Japanese guy, born and raised in Tokyo. His parents had a sushi bar in Tokyo, and this is where he learned to make sushi since he was 2. And I was very nervous, obviously not being Japanese, and I think that he was going to figure that out pretty fast. So he sits down and looks at my resume and kind of whatever, throws to the side, and looks at me and he goes, do you like to drink beer? And I looked around, where's the camera?
It's a trap.
I'm 23 years old. Is this a trick question? And I'm like, yes, of course I like to drink beer. And he's like, good, because you're going to have to learn how to be drunk and make sushi at the same time. So my qualifications to get hired was basically I could drink a lot of beer.
That's what.
And I get too wasted.
You can still operate a knife after drinking some beer.
Yes.
So I have to ask, and don't get me wrong, I want to come back to your career because I know there's so many different steps to it. I want to get to the opening of the restaurant, of course, and I will ask you about your tattoos in a bit. But I need to add, I was wondering this while we were talking. Is this how it's done in Japan? Could a kid with 9 months experience and knows how to drink beer kind of started a restaurant?
For sure. You could definitely, you don't really have to have a lot of background in Japan. They take you from nothing and they mold you into a sushi chef. But the difference is, in Japan, you apprentice for 10 years.
Wait, say that again?
You apprentice for 10 years. You start by getting beers for customers at the sushi bar, and you're washing tatami mats. After they close, you're doing dishes. Then maybe one day they might let you make miso soup. Maybe one day they might let you make, they start to teach you how to make rice. You make rice for years and years. Then you start cutting fish. 10 years before you ever serve a customer.
10 years before you will
10 years.
make a piece of sushi
For a
and
customer.
serve a customer.
Yeah. Matter of fact, the training's so extensive, usually after the 10 years, people actually go and open a restaurant after becoming an apprentice.
Because they'll be working in another restaurant for that long.
Well, basically, it's kind of like they've passed, right?
Right.
If you're actually talented enough to make sushi for a customer, then you have lifted the pot and put it down, and the door opens up.
And then you get to do it. Have you been to Japan?
I have. First time I went to Japan was before we opened our second restaurant. I went for 16 days with a very good friend of mine, Taka, who was born and raised in Tokyo.
You're going to have to tell us a little bit more about Taka than that.
How much time do we have? Taka is a fantastic person. He moved to America to become a rock star, and he did. He succeeded. He was a guitarist for the group Deltron and for Dr. Octagon. Yeah. They toured around. These are hip-hop bands by a local producer. So Taka.
But he didn't get off the airplane and become a rock and roll star.
No, we worked together at Tokyo Go-Go. Yeah. Yeah. I can't tell the stories that I want to tell about Taka because my wife will divorce me. Yeah, he worked at Ichi also in the early days. Yeah.
And so Taka and you went to Japan.
Taka and I went to Japan for 16 days. All we did was eat and drink for 16 days. We started off with all his favorite places, the places that he worked at when he was living there, restaurants, and then we would just walk probably like anywhere from 15 to 20 miles a day. And literally, we would walk by a place, Taka would kind of check it out. He'd peek his head in, he'd sniff, and he'd look around, and he'd either give me the come on in, or he'd walk back out and we'd go somewhere else. I mean, we probably ate, I'd say probably 6 or 7 places a day. We would start early and just go all night. And the thing about Japan is you can go, and the next thing you know, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, and you're eating yakitori or ramen, right? It's just, it happens like that in Japan.
And you keep going. What were the differences? What kind of surprised you as somebody that came out through this West Coast sushi scene? And if you have a minute, maybe even talk a little bit about that. How did sushi kind of explode here on the West Coast in the U.S.?
Well, sushi got really big. Well, it started off in the 80s. California sushi started to get was actually invented in L.A. I can't remember the name of the chef, but he basically was tricking Americans eating raw fish, because to us, to our culture as Americans, it was something very foreign. We don't eat raw fish, right? Most people don't even eat fish.
I mean, I eat a ton of it, but back in the 80s.
Back in the 80s, no, it was not a common thing to eat raw fish. So he made a California roll as a stepping stone to get people to actually start to eat raw fish. But the problem that happened is that people got really used to the rolls. The rolls got crazier and crazier. And the next thing you know, in the mid-90s, late 90s, this crazy American sushi got so popular that, I mean, in San Francisco alone, there's over 2,000 sushi bars, just in San Francisco alone. And probably of traditional Japanese sushi, maybe 15 actually serve traditional Japanese sushi. Not just like a rainbow roll, a dragon roll, mayonnaise.
Yeah,
and
baby, that's when the East Coast got a hold of it. That's where my people come from. Made the Philly roll, put some cream cheese in it. Mmm.
My wife's from Flint, Michigan, and we go there all the time, and always the cousins are like, oh, let's go to my favorite sushi place. And I'm like, we're in Flint, Michigan.
But so what did you discover when you were there in Japan? What what stood out to you about the differences, and what were some of the things that you kind of internalized and brought back?
Well, I was fortunate enough to learn traditional sushi, but we made American sushi. My chef trained me how you would train a normal chef, or how you would train an apprentice in Japan. But the difference is, I would serve customers. You can't really afford to have a bunch of apprentices in San Francisco and have them just be apprentices and only not making sushi, right? You know, and the sushi bars are different too. There are bigger sushi bars in Japan, but most are small. Most are like just a mom and pop kind of style. So you don't have to worry about having to feed like 90 people, right? It's the mom and pops are, I mean, again, there are bigger ones, but the more common ones are just the mom and pop style. So, it's just sushi. It's rice, it's fish, and it's soy sauce, and maybe some ponzu sauce here, or maybe some lemon zest here, or some salt. There's some different variations, but you're not seeing mayonnaise, you're not seeing a ton of wasabi. They don't even give you wasabi unless you're having sashimi. If you're eating nigiri, the wasabi is underneath. It's already there. You don't need it. You're not trying to make it spicy. The spicy thing is an American thing. The lots of wasabi make you cry. That's an American thing. It's not a Japanese thing at all.
The dumb macho thing's an American thing? Nah.
The dude snorting wasabi on the table next to you is not a Japanese thing. I'm telling you.
That's funny. You just remind, like, the first time I tried sushi in New Hampshire.
You snorted wasabi?
No.
Oh.
No, but I do remember they were like the more of the green stuff you eat, the like the cooler
it's guacamole.
You are.
Don't worry, it's guacamole.
Yeah.
You can tell I'm Mexican by the way I say guacamole.
Have you played that trick on somebody? Have you done that to somebody?
We used to do that to really like horrible customers. Like you're making a nigiri and you'd be like, this guy is such a just piece of work. And you would get like the giantest chunk of wasabi and put it underneath his nigiri and give it to him and just watch him. And you tap your buddies and everyone would be looking over and he's like, oh, so good, so good. So fresh, so fresh.
Trying to impress like the person.
Yeah. Speaking to the mic.
Right, trying to impress the person.
You should have gone Rhythm Nation.
Yeah,
I'm telling you.
I should have done the Madonna. He was telling me before. But so, and again, we got a lot to get into. But while we're talking Japan, your second trip to Japan, could you just share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So second trip to Japan, I was on a TV show in Japan.
And this was like after Ichi came. I'm skipping timeline a little bit here, but I just think it's a fun story.
It's probably like 5 years in. We just were about. No, we had already opened up the big restaurant. We expanded, we closed the little guy, 21-seater, moved to a 80-seater from 450 square feet to 3,000 square feet. Yeah.
We'll get into that.
Yeah, almost killed me, literally. So we were there, and I got an email, and it was saying that there was somebody had done some research, and they had found out that I was the best non-Japanese sushi chef in America. Well, thank you. Where they got this information, I have no idea. I vaguely, drunkly remember putting that on the internet one night, but and if I would like be interested in coming out and doing a TV show, and I would be famous in Japan. The first airing is going to be 9 million people. I'm going to be following. It's the day in the life of a sushi chef. So basically, it's 24 hours of me following this guy around his life of being a sushi chef in Japan. So I'm really excited. I'm feeling very honored. They're going to pay me to actually go out there, plus pay for everything. So we say yes, I get on the plane, and as soon as I get off the plane, 14-hour flight to Japan. It's kind of brutal. And as soon as I get off the plane, and it's July in Japan, so it's like 98 degrees and like 1 million times humidity, maybe more. So I'm in shorts and a t-shirt and my bags, and I come off, and they got the film crew, and they see me come out, and then you see the camera go down, and then you see them speak in Japanese, and then they make me go in the bathroom and put a suit on and go back out, and then come out again like I was wearing the suit the whole entire time. I already knew it was going to be a bad situation after that. I mean, it was so hot. I mean, the sweat was just like dripping off of me. So that happens. We go into this little yakitori bar in the airport, and again, 14 hours, and I was like, I just want to drink a beer, and they didn't want me to drink a beer, so they finally gave me a beer, started asking me all these questions. How do you make rice? How do you cut fish? How do you do this? And I told them how I did it, and they looked very confused, and they're talking to each other in Japanese, and they're like, that's how we do it. And I'm like, why is this surprising to you? So whatever, go to my hotel room. Next day, they pick me up at 4 o'clock in the morning. This is, so I'm following around a sushi chef. He's the head chef of one of the restaurants called Tsukiji Sushiko, and there's a ton of them throughout Japan, in Tokyo. They're a huge chain. I think it was like 25 locations. But the original one started right by the Tsukiji market in Tokyo. And he was the head chef of that one. So it was me following this guy around. So the first scene is us at their headquarters, where they're getting all the orders from all 25 restaurants coming in to then go to the Tsukiji market and buy fish for all 25 restaurants. So we're talking about thousands and thousands of pounds. So these guys are like, when they see Tsukiji market, they roll through, they're like mafia, you know? It's like people are like brushing stuff out of their way. People are putting on deodorants, brushing their teeth. So
me when I see you.
Except the deodorant part. So they're going through and they're filming us, and and everyone's just bowing, and the president of the company's there, and he comes over and he looks at the fish, and then the camera, it's on him and it's on me, and he's like, do you know what kind of fish this is? Well, so there's a translator the whole entire time too. So you know what kind of fish this is? Yeah, that's kohada. And it was like, I could hear you could hear a fish scale drop in the Tsukiji market, right? It was like, how do you know what that is? And I said, because we carry it at the restaurant.
At this point, are you starting to realize that maybe
well, no,
something
still,
that
I'm
you
just
were...
like, okay, then maybe that's very shocking because, we are unique. And this was back then when, there's a lot more omakase restaurants now in San Francisco, but back then there wasn't, we were rare. We were definitely very rare. And he says something really long to the translator, and then she looks at me and she goes, are you lying? And again, it's like 98 degrees, and there's like a million humidity, and it's like I'm in like a suit, and I'm just like, and it's like 5 o'clock in the morning, and I said, why in the F? And I said the F word. Would I fly out here to lie to you? I didn't say the real F word. I just said F. And she giggles, and she says, I can't say that to them. So at the moment, I was like, do I walk away? Or do I continue? Obviously, I'm the butt of the joke, right? There's a French guy that's with me. I have been making sushi for at least 20 years at this point. There's a French guy that's with me who runs a sushi bar in Paris, and it's a sushi boat place. And he's been making sushi for 2 years.
He was like you at the beginning.
My thought was use this guy as a human shield the whole entire time. Because at least I know what the fish is. This dude has no clue. He's never seen a whole fish. All his fish comes packaged, pre-cut, already ready to go, right? So I sucked it up, and I was like, I'm just going to go with it. There's a lot of opportunities here. I'm going to be able to actually make sushi in a Tokyo sushi bar, which otherwise would never happen in my entire life. So I sucked it up, and I went through.
And real quick, what was the title of the show?
So the whole reason why this show even exists, it's state-funded. Japan is having a hard time finding apprentices for the things that they are most famous for. So they can't find sushi chef apprentices or even just any kind of cooks because their apprenticeship is so long and so grueling that the younger generation don't want to go through it. They can't find people who want usually it's generation passed down in the family when you make sake or nihonshu. the younger generation, they don't want to do it. You're actually seeing American and Brits in Japan who are brewing at really famous sake brewers or Nihonshu brewers because the younger generation doesn't want to do it. So this whole show was put out there to basically show the youth that, hey, like there's a reason why sushi in Japan is so good. This is the reason why sake is so good. This is the reason why, that we make the best knives and swords in the world, is because you have to really put a lot of time in if you're going to be a master someday of making this. It's just, you can't just go out. Looking back on it in retrospect, I was making sushi. I apprenticed 10 years with a guy who I trained under, which is not very common in America, but it just ended up happening. And looking back on it, making sushi was a big distraction because you would prep and you would do your thing, but then you would start talking to customers, and it's in America, it's very common to drink with your sushi chef. People usually buy their sushi chefs beers, and if you don't, you should at least ask because they really like that. But you'd end up getting drunk, you would end up having to work, it'd be really busy, but you said customers, but you would get distracted. You wouldn't be just focusing on what you're supposed to be focusing on.
On the art form of it.
On the art form of it. So looking back, I can see why 10 years is why they do it. And if you would have asked me that in my year 2 of me working with my sensei, no, I probably would have quit if I wouldn't have been able to actually serve customers. But
looking back on it,
there's a reason why, right? This is something that's been going on for thousands of years. It's not like they just thought it up. All of a sudden, oh, by the way, we're going to extend the apprenticeship to 10 years.
It's the way it's always been.
It's the way it's always been.
So what was the name of the show?
Look How Great Japan Is.
Okay. I'm just saying that maybe should have been a tell. That you were as the person invited from America.
No, they told us it was something else. And when I got there, then the translator actually spilled a lot of beans to me when we would have lunch and stuff.
After you dropped the F-bomb, translator really liked you. But let me ask you, how did you do on that show, and how did your French compatriot?
Well, I did pretty good. I got a 7 out of 10 with actually making nigiri again, behind the bar in Tokyo at a sushi bar. To be able to actually make nigiri was a huge milestone for me.
Because that would never happen.
Again, it's never going to happen. I'm not going to go to Japan, or would they even probably, they would let me, but I probably wouldn't have a lot of customers. Maybe because it would be funny. But it's just not going to happen, right? It's just not going to happen. So I actually got to go through this process, go back there. I did really well on everything except for one thing. So this is really funny because this is tattoo based. So again, all the research they did on me, they said to bring 3 chef coats. Well, sushi chefs don't wear long sleeve chef coats, right? They're always cut short because you're making sushi. It's very wet. You got your right hand in the rice bucket. So I went out and bought 3 brand new chef coats. Get there, we're doing the scene. They're like, put on your coat. So I put on my coat and I come out and my arms are exposed. And they're like, you can't wear that. And I'm like, why? And they said, because your tattoos show. And I said, well, did you not know that I didn't have tattoos? And they're like, well, it doesn't matter. You can't show your tattoos. So wear this. So they brought out this laboratory schmuck that was double extra large in Japan, which means an extra small in Mexico. So here I am squeezing this thing on. I look like a sausage with arms. And take it, I was 40 pounds heavier back then too. So, and again, it's 98 degrees with a million times humidity outside. And there's just I can barely move my arms. And they're like, cut this fish. And then the camera's on me and I'm like, ah. And I'm shaking and I can barely get my arms that close together. And they pop back. And I just murdered this fish. And I could just see the sushi chef's face was just you disgust me. I just felt so lame after that. But that was the one thing I screwed up.
I would argue that you did, you exceeded expectations. Because
They
how
told,
did
they told
your
the
other
French guy,
guy
so
go?
at the very end, they had us down in a little panel asking us all those questions. We're saying this and that. The sushi chef says, hey, I can see the spirit in your soul. You have the passion in your heart. If you keep working at this, someday you will be good. Maybe okay. But you definitely have it in you. And then they looked at the French guy and they said, we would never let you make sushi in Japan ever. Human body shield.
Well, it's funny you should do that because it's something that I've known you now for actually quite some time. We are not just paired here randomly, and it's something that I always, I learned about you very early on was how much you valued it as an art form, how much you viewed it as not just making food, but kind of a way to make a space when it comes to making a restaurant and a way to share your skill that was passed down to you, like you said, the person that you worked under for 10 years. So I was wondering if you could talk just a little bit about, one, how bad I was when you had me help you make sushi 10 years ago, because I was basically Tim's assistant when he got started. But that's just kind of a jokey segue into, could you talk about how Ichi took off as a catering company and then became a restaurant?
Yeah, so Isaac worked for me in the very early days when we were a catering company. He was working at 826, and then he wasn't working at 826 Valencia, the nonprofit literacy program and the mission. My wife called me and said, hey, Isaac needs a job.
We're talking like literally, I moved out from the East Coast. I love San Francisco with all my heart. I lived here for 10 years. I didn't know there was a place that was this beautiful. I'd never been further west than Montana. I came here in January. I had a return ticket and I didn't get on the plane. I didn't know that it didn't snow in places like this. I still to this day can't believe that all of America doesn't live here. I feel like try not to tell many people about it.
They're trying to now.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. This was earlier days. But I literally was looking at like I wasn't going to be able to make rent and I was going to have to move back to New Hampshire and my sweet Philly rolls when it comes to sushi.
So my wife calls me and says, Isaac needs a job. And I said, no. And she says, you don't really have a choice in this one. I said, okay. So I hired Isaac. We were making sushi at the peak. We were making sushi for Google, both campuses. For the Mountain View campus, we were one of like 15 sushi caterers. They were spending over $5 million a year that year just on outsourcing sushi. And believe me, I was not making that kind of money. We had one cafe out of like 36 or something like that. Plus we had the San Francisco location, YouTube, LinkedIn, Pixar, 23andMe. We had all these corporate accounts. Things were going really well. We would get there around 4, start making sushi. We'd probably make little bento
When you say
boxes.
4, do you want to 4 at 4 what?
4 in the morning? 4 in the morning, yeah.
He kind of hired me because I was the only guy that would show up. Keep going.
Yeah. Isaac still had a cocktail in his hand when he would come to work at 4 o'clock in the morning. And we would make all these little bento boxes. Isaac would help make them. He was my main delivery guy. 2008 came along, and this is back then when no one would sign a contract with you, so the business you had could end like that, and it did. I lost all those accounts within a month of each other. And not to bash anybody, but it was Christmas break and we had delivered and we're like, cool, so after Christmas, the numbers are saying the same. No, actually, we're not gonna use you anymore, thanks for everything. And that was it. I had 5 employees, 6 employees. I had a kitchen that we had just built. It was pretty tragic. So we got creative. We started doing pop-ups in bars. I'd actually literally go inside of a bar and set up a sushi bar, and we would sell it.
Literally
to order.
And this is the other thing that I think is just so important. Like Tim would go to fish market most mornings and hand select fish. and then he would take it and make these boxes, and I would try to help. But he would make incredible boxes, and then we would deliver those. And then on Wednesdays at the Knockout, what was a few of the other bars?
Bender's.
111 Minute. No, what was the other rock and roll one down here?
Covered Wagon, not the Covered Wagon. Annie's.
So I'm just talking like real rock and roll bars. And Tim, we would roll in with a beer cooler basically, and you would set up a workstation and sell, I would argue, phenomenal sushi for incredibly low prices.
It was $2 nigiri and $3 rolls.
Yeah. Those are the days. Tim would always tell me what the freshest fish was. I am not the smartest person in the world, so I would always forget. And Tim would always be like, why are we always out of salmon? And it took about a year before he realized that that's because I would always just say, people would be like, what's the freshest? I go, salmon. The salmon is so good today.
It's true.
So anyways, Tim got me out of his organization, and then Ichi thrived. When did the restaurant open up?
We opened the restaurant in 2010, September 17th. So we'll be 9 years, September 17th.
You can clap for that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been quite a journey. So
tell us a little bit about
that.
So
we were the small little restaurant. We didn't take reservations back then. Back then we had 4.5 stars on Yelp. Which back then, I mean, that could make or break you, and it definitely made us for sure. We had 2-hour waits every single night. This 21-seat restaurant. So after like year 3, we're like, okay, we're losing a lot of money to the bar next door because everybody's waiting there. They're waiting for 2 hours. They're getting wasted on tequila because it was a tequila bar. And they would come back and they'd be like, we don't want anything to drink. We're just hungry. And I'd be like, that's where I make my money. I don't make money on fish. I make money on drinks. So we decided to open a bigger place. Actually, we were driving down the street because so if I'm at the sushi bar, this is me making sushi. My apartment was right there where that alarm is. We lived across the street. I mean, it was literally that close. So we were driving down the street.
When you say we, just to be clear.
My wife and I.
Do you want
and
to
our
talk
dog and
real
our cat.
quick about Erin as a business partner?
She's a mean boss. She's from the Midwest. She has a very high work ethic. Much higher than someone from Sacramento, I'll tell you that much. So we were driving down the street, and there was a for lease sign on this building down the street. It was a Peruvian produce market. And Erin said, oh my God, that's our next restaurant. And I looked at her and I said, you are bleep, bleep, bleep out of your mind. There's no way we are moving. And that place is 3,000 square feet. No way. You're crazy. And then 2 years later, we opened up the restaurant there. It was a fun run. Like the things that you have in your head that are going to work, perfectly. This is not one of those scenarios that worked out perfectly.
Well, I'm going to interrupt you there real quick because, it worked out perfectly in some ways. At this point, I had moved to New York, and I'll never forget once just looking at Twitter and Martha Stewart basically being like, this is the best sushi I've ever had, and she was at this restaurant.
That's true.
And is that a true story that I just told?
That is a true story. Martha Stewart did come in. She took a bunch of pictures and posted them online, and they're all like blurry and like sideways.
It was early days, Tim.
There was this
you
picture.
Leave Martha Stewart alone.
So
She's
we had a whole.
great at social media.
I'm notorious for not serving soy sauce with my nigiri because we season everything, and I just do not give it out to customers. So I got tired of telling people. So at the big restaurant, we made a whole mural of the proper way to eat sushi. And there was this thing that said no soy sauce needed, and she took a picture of it, and again, it's crooked and it's blurry. She says, who's this guy I think he is, the sushi Nazi? And then everyone's like, oh my God, Martha Stewart hates Ichi sushi.
Did you like the no soy sauce thing? Is that something that you got into like trouble with, that you butted? Like, where does that philosophy come from?
So we do Tokyo style sushi, where it's seasoned. Not all Tokyo sushi bars do this, but some places do. And when you season something, you don't need to add more soy sauce to it. So my philosophy, and which I was trying to do, is educate Americans that sushi is just not wasabi and soy sauce. Because basically, when most Americans make their little slurry, first of all, you would never just want to put wasabi in a bowl and add soy sauce to it, because as soon as you add any kind of liquid to wasabi, it makes it 20 times stronger. So you're making it a lot stronger than it already is. So once you do this, you make this very heavy slurry of soy sauce and wasabi. It's the only thing you can taste. You can't taste the fish anymore. And that's what sushi is all about. It's about rice, then fish, and then in that order. The rice actually is the most important thing. And when you soak your rice in a bunch of wasabi and soy sauce, you're not going to taste anything but wasabi and soy sauce. So we had been doing it wrong for years, and it took me a long time to learn that myself, but once I did, I was like, we need to educate the world. This is not just this mayonnaise and 15 ingredient rolls. That's not really sushi. Technically it is, because I think by definition, anything with a vinegared rice added to it is considered sushi, an actual definition of sushi. But what we were doing to it was just, to me, it was a shame. We were taking this really awesome fish and we were hiding it. We were tricking people into eating raw fish. And that's what sushi's not about that at all.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but can you remember what your rules were? Like, could you list, like, on the wall? Could you list? I know Aaron could in a second.
Yeah, there was don't pour for yourself. So in customly, you would, if you want more sake or beer, you pour your friend first, and then they're supposed to pour for you. That was one. Don't leave a bunch of food on the plate. Eat everything that you order. This is something that some fish animals have died to be on our plate. Don't waste it. It's a Japanese philosophy. No soy sauce, no wasabi, extra. What else? Oh, don't put ginger on your sushi.
I was almost scared to bring ginger up because you were already so mad at soy sauce and wasabi. Isn't that just supposed to cleanse the palate, or no?
Yes,
Okay.
in between bites.
That's okay.
Not a giant glob on top of your sushi.
Man, we were doing sushi wrong in New Hampshire.
That's okay. They were doing it wrong in California also.
Yeah. There's a lot of places. Okay, so you open the big restaurant. Obviously, like, there's difficulties that come involved with that, and now you guys are back in that original smaller location.
Well, if anybody's ever done business or tried to go through the building permit process in San Francisco, you learn a lot of lessons. It took us 9 months just to get a change of use permit. I mean, this is before we could even submit plans to do the remodel. So we ate up 8 months worth. So we got 4 months free rent, ate that up, and then we started paying rent on a place that we haven't even done construction on.
Wow.
And then the process of actually getting the permits through took another like 6 months. So by the time I actually even started to, pull out a hammer, it had been almost a year and a half had gone by. And it's just eating up our budget and just eating it up, and it took forever. Took 3 times as long and twice as much. So when we finally did open, I was under a lot of stress. To save money, I decided to build all the stools in the restaurant myself. I definitely had repaired at least each stool once, some twice.
You built them by hand.
I built them by hand, yeah.
But let me ask, what for you? Do you like being in the smaller space more?
So the big restaurant came with, Biggie Smalls, more money, more problems is definitely true. We went from, I think, 10 employees to 35 at the big one, and now we're back to 13. I thought I was ready for 30 employees. I was not ready for 30 employees. I was so stressed out by the end of it that I was producing so much cortisol in my body that
What's cortisol?
cortisol is your stress hormone. It's the fight or flight hormone. Basically, when you produce a bunch of cortisol, you're either ready to run really fast or you're ready to fight really hard. And I had so much going through my body all the time because I was so stressed out that I had created 2 tumors on my adrenal gland. So the hormones go through your adrenal gland and then get distributed through your body. You have one on each kidney. I had destroyed this one and I had 2 tumors. One was 2.5 centimeters, and the other one was 3.2. So we're talking like giant tumors that I had produced. They were just full of cortisol. And so I had to have them removed. I had surgery to have them removed. I woke up from the surgery and I thought that they had taken me outside and ran the ambulance over me like 4 or 5 times. I said, something's wrong. They said, your pain tolerance is low, which made me so angry for someone who would stand on his feet for 14 hours a day, who would stab himself, poke himself with a fish fin, burn himself.
While cooking, to be clear.
A day.
I mean, actually,
Yes.
you know, I mean, we're close, but I don't know. I mean, I don't want to judge
To
you.
tell me my pain tolerance was low and that I shouldn't be, I'm imagining all of this. So I was supposed to be in the ICU for 1 day. I ended up spending 5 days there. They convinced me that going home would make me feel better. So I was up for it because I was ready to get out. I didn't eat this whole entire time. I would just suck on ice chips. Got home. It took me like maybe 30 minutes to get up 4 flights of stairs. I could barely walk. I got home. I actually did feel better. We had bought, so before the surgery, we knew that I was going to have stomach surgery. So we went out and bought this really fancy Lazy Boy that we knew we were going to get rid of as soon as after I was recovered. But it was this big, comfy, ugly Lazy Boy that had it was like remote control, like whole 9 yards. So I'm there and I'm like, oh, this is great. And I got kind of hungry. I got started feeling better. I ate a saltine. I drank some Gatorade. I took my meds. I passed out. I woke up 4 hours later. I thought someone was stabbing me. It was the most excruciating pain I've ever felt in my entire life. This was around 3 o'clock. My poor wife had been up with me and working and taking care of the restaurant. So I sat there in pain until she woke up, and she gets up early, thank God. And I said, something's wrong. And I was just dripping in sweat because I was in so much pain. And so we called the doc. Hey, something's wrong. He's like, yeah, something is wrong. You guys need to get back right away. And we're like, oh, okay, that was easy. We thought this might be more of a fight. And we go in, and he's like, well, we got your biopsy back from the tumors, and only thing that showed up was pancreatic tissue. And I was like, what does that mean? How did that happen? Did someone spill a little pancreatic tissue in my biopsy?
It should have been all cortisone, right?
It should have just been the tumors, right? So he excused himself. I was readmitted to the hospital, and I had to have emergency surgery.
Because they had not taken out the tumors.
They had taken 50% of my pancreas and didn't touch my adrenal gland or the tumors. And I don't know if you know, but on the scale of pain, it goes spine surgery, pancreatic surgery, everything else.
I like how hung up on the pain thing you are.
Yeah.
You're like, just so you know, really painful.
Yeah.
And you handled it like a champ.
Yeah, I did. No, I was a baby. I was such a baby. I was like, there's not enough morphine drips right now. Hook up this vein, hook up that vein. So I ended up spending total about 3 months in the hospital. The surgeon that did fix my pancreas saved my life. They told my wife first, and then they told me that I probably wasn't going to make it. My pancreas was dying, my blood was septic. It was going to be a rough battle, but whatever. I was like, oh yeah, try being a Mexican sushi chef.
So I got to ask you just a couple of questions before, and then guys, we're going to open up to the audience for you guys. So please do start thinking about questions if you have anything that you want to ask Tim. But I did want to kind of ask. You're back in the small location now.
I mean, that's my favorite. I won't lie. I loved everything that you did with the big place, but the Ichi Sushi to me feels like home. It's such a small, intimate space. Again, if you guys have not been there, it is absolutely wonderful. It's totally worth the trip. Give me the address real quick so people can look it up.
3369 Mission Street in Bernal Heights.
There it is. It's like past where Mission meets Valencia on the other side. But I just wanted to ask real quick to tell us maybe real quickly the stories of these tattoos, which I love and are beautiful, and then maybe the story of your other tattoo.
Okay. My wife loves this story also. So I got this tattoo first. This was actually done by a gentleman who did a live tattoo session for this exhibit, Colin Stevens. He's an interesting individual. He is American. His father is one of the highest scholars of Japanese calligraphy in the world. So they moved to Japan when he was really young. So all he speaks and writes Japanese. It's his first language. And he came back to America. He did this tattoo for me. It's a dragon. My wife calls it the kitty. No, the puppy.
The puppy. That's
the puppy. Yeah. Man, I don't know. I thought it'd be really cool if I had the dragon to get the tiger. So I got the tiger. This guy is really talented. I got this tattoo in 1998. And I do not wear sunscreen. And it is as clean as it was the day I walked out.
For those of you that aren't familiar with tattoos, for just like a little comparison, I have a tattoo on my shoulder that was supposed to be like a tree inside of a sun. I also got it in 1998. I also don't wear sunscreen. It looks like Spider-Man getting his Spidey sense now. It is terrible. So for that to still look like that is incredible.
Yeah. So my first tattoo is on my calf. Actually, I got two stories. I haven't told you about this one. So I got first tattoos on my calf. Tattoos on my calf. When I was going to college, I was taking Mexican history courses, and I got really into my Mexican history. So I decided to get the very bottom of the Aztec calendar. There's these two dragons that come around. One's the god of night, and one's the god of day. So of course I had my buddy do it. You know, he was a tattoo artist. And I got it on my calf. I bled most of it out that day. His needles were a little dull.
Also, drinking does thin your blood.
Yes.
You should not drink when you're getting a tattoo, just a heads up.
I was not drinking, but still, it was bad. But I'm really proud of this tattoo. I go home to Sacramento to show my parents, and I'm like, check it out. I got this tattoo on my calf of the Aztec calendar. And my mom's like in the bathroom, like putting her makeup on. My dad's still in bed, and my dad just shoots up like he's like, has like rigor mortis, and he's like, you got a tattoo? My mom's like, what? Like, what'd you get? And I'm like, oh, it's the bottom of the Aztec calendar. My mom's like, are you in a gang? And I was like, what? And then like right from that, she goes, you know, your brother was hanging out with you, you guys were hanging out, and he's like, Mom, is Tim gay? And she's like, you know, mijo, I didn't know what to tell him. And I'm like, that's a transition from am I in a gang to am I gay? Yes, Mom, I'm in a gay gang. A gay Mexican gang, and we beat up white heterosexuals. Yeah, that's, you realize your parents don't know who you are. That was the exact moment. So I have another tattoo on my arm, and it's up here. It says, it's Kyodai. The two characters together is Kyodai, and it's older brother, younger brother. My best friend, when he graduated from college, it only took him 8 years. We celebrated by going out and getting tattoos. We've been best friends since we were 14 years old. We still are.
Real quick, it's Sean Thomas.
Sean Thomas,
also a
yeah.
very wonderful local San Francisco chef.
And we got this tattoo. So this is when I was working at Tokyo Go-Go, Japanese chef. We worked 6 days a week. I asked for an extra day off, which was basically like asking, I don't even know, like for $1 million. And my chef was like, well, you know, I didn't go to my friend's graduations, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't go to my mom's funeral. And I'm just like, can I just have one extra day off?
Like, that seems
Finally, they
intense.
gave me off. So I go up to Humboldt. I rent Humboldt, party like crazy, got tattoos, come home. I'm really excited to show my chef, right? I got this Japanese tattoo. I'm super excited. Like, I'm like, Yoshi, check it out. Check out my tattoo. And he's like, why did you get boyfriend written on your arm? And I'm just like, what? And he walks away and just leaves. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, what? So then I'm like looking around for him. I can't find him. Finally, I find him in the walk-in and he's just crying, laughing so hard. And I couldn't say anything, my sensei, so I'm like, oh, it's a good one, Kiyoshi. He was like, yeah. He's like, oh, you know, Japanese people do that because no one ever knows what they get written on themselves, really, right? You're trusting this translation of a tattoo artist of something on the wall, basically, in a tattoo shop, right? Who knows what it says, really?
And that's the man that taught you how to make sushi.
Yep, that's
and
the
that's
guy.
the man who, and say his full name again real quick.
Kiyoshi Hayakawa.
And there it is.
Hayakawa means fast-flowing river in Japanese.
All right, and this, ladies and gentlemen, is Tim Archuleta. Give it up. Okay, we're going to open it up to questions from the audience. Again, just real quick, I would like to remind us, let's ask questions, not so much with the comments, and let's try and keep it brief. We only have so many minutes left here.
I first want to ask, will you two sign the books if people purchase them from our store?
Oh, 100%.
All right.
Absolutely.
Purchase them. Any questions here?
I like owe money to Tim still, so.
Tim, will you show us the favorite tattoo of yours on Isaac's body?
Do it.
I don't know if he has one.
You know, it's interesting because the first thing I told Isaac when he got his first tattoo is that don't get any hand or neck tattoos. He has a hand and a neck tattoo.
You know how it is. You can't listen to your boss forever.
Yeah, it's true. I like his knuckle tattoos.
The knuckle tattoos, they say come home, and they're in remembrance of Dave Lamb, who was a wonderful friend of mine, who was also an incredible musician. He was in a band called Brown Bird. He also had these tattoos. And we didn't talk about this real quick during the thing, but Dave Lamb, he got his knuckle tattoos back in the 90s. Like now, you can kind of work at a corporate job with tattoos, no problem. But back then, he never wanted to give up on his dreams of being a musician. Sorry, I'm gonna get into this one real quick. He got these knuckle tattoos. They say come home, and his main reason for it was, if I have knuckle tattoos, I'm never going to go back into corporate life. I'm never going to quit on being a musician. So he started this beautiful band called Brown Bird. You can look him up online. He used to come out and visit me every time he played San Francisco, and I remember like the first time he came to visit me, he was on the floor, mainly probably because I didn't have any furniture. And he played like the worst bar in San Francisco. The second time he came out, I think I had gotten a couch by that point. He crashed on my couch, played like the second worst bar in San Francisco. Anyways, this goes on and on until he opened for the Devil Makes Three sold out show at the Fillmore. So I got to watch him just really dedicate his life to following his dream. And then he got cancer, he beat it, and then sadly, he didn't beat it as well as we thought he had, and he passed away a few years ago. And so, in remembrance of him, me and his widow got our come home tattoos on our knuckles.
On a lighter note, any more questions?
Got one right up there.
Oh, wait. Here. Here you go.
What would you say are the differences between the tradition of sushi in New York versus West Coast?
There's a lot more traditional Japanese sushi restaurants in New York than there is in California. But saying that, I'm pretty sure for the last 5 years, there's probably been an average of like 5 or 6 omakase-only restaurants opening in San Francisco. But before 2010, there was maybe 3. And now there's probably like 30, maybe more. In New York, for some reason, they were a little ahead of even though it all kind of started in California, just even bringing sushi to America. The East Coast really picked up on it. I think because there's a lot more Japanese tourism in New York than there was in California. So, but you know, it was a little bit different though, because Japanese population of people living of Nihon, of actually Japanese people born in Japan, were moving to California in big droves, especially in LA back in the 80s and 70s and 80s. In New York, it'd be easier to find a more traditional sushi restaurant. I think it all depends, but they have the crazy rolls restaurants in New York too. I think if it's traditional, it's traditional. There's not really this East Coast, West Coast. It's Japanese style, edome style sushi, which means it's basically like current style sushi, which is like 1,000 years old, right? It's like, this is the most modern version of it. And it's basically was all stemmed from before the refrigerators. You would go get your fish from the docks, you would prep it, and you would have your little cart, and you would have to marinate everything in either soy sauce, vinegar, or salt. So you would go out, and you'd have your shit, you know, your little cart, you would run out, and back then in Tokyo, the way that the houses were built, they were all built in lines, right? So if there was a fire would break out, obviously there was no fire hydrants to access. So what you would do to break the line, you would literally knock out a whole row of homes. So it couldn't jump to the next row. So the firemen were also the construction guys. And they were always busy because fires were always breaking out back then. I mean, talking a lot of people in Tokyo even back then. And so the guy who was knocking down your home was also the guy rebuilding your home. So sushi was a perfect street food back then because it had rice and it had protein and it was fast. I mean, you're talking about nigiri back in the day, it would be like that big and like big chunks of rice. And again, it was all marinated to be able to be out in Tokyo when it's 98 degrees and a million times humidity, right? The fish is going to go bad first. We didn't have ice back then. We didn't have refrigeration. So you would marinate everything and then you'd make your nigiri and then off back to work. So yeah, Edo style, it's in New York, and now it's really gotten to be really big in California also.
There we go.
I just have a question.
Sure.
How is your health now? Are you cancer-free today? And
I am, thank you very much. I can gladly say that actually, when they finally got the tumors, they were benign. It was literally my adrenal gland just couldn't handle that much cortisol at one time. So it was pushing it out into tumors. And then they were randomly popping inside of me. And I would have these really weird adverse effects. I would be nauseous, but starving. I couldn't stay awake for more than like an hour or two. And this would be for like a month at a time. And I would go to the doctor and try to figure out what was going on. They gave me West Nile test. I mean, they tested me for everything. And they were like, we don't know what's wrong with you, because it would just go away. And then like a year and a half later, I'd build it up and they would pop. And then they're like, okay, let's just give you an MRI. And they gave you the MRI, like, oh, yeah. Those are just substantial tumors. So it was never, thank God it was never cancerous, thank God. I am diabetic now. I only have 40% of my pancreas left. I take a lot of medication for being diabetic now. But my life is great. And if anything I got to tell you, it was, in a really weird, strange way, it was a blessing. I was working so much and I was drinking so much to compensate for how much I was working that if that wouldn't have gotten me, something else would have, because I was destroying my life. I was killing myself to live. A good Black Sabbath song, by the way.
Absolutely.
But if it wasn't that, I mean, it would have been something else, because it just was not sustainable. I was in bed. This is when they first started giving me morphine, because they couldn't figure out anything else to take the pain away. And my poor wife, who was working in her regular job, running the restaurant and taking care of me, and she leaned over and she's like, honey, the doctors told me not to stress you out, but we're selling the restaurants. I was so high, and I was like, thank God. I woke up and thought it was a dream, but it was real, and again, I was like, oh my gosh, it's so exciting. We're selling the restaurants.
Also, can I be like silver lining guy like a little bit too?
Sure.
You also look,
Yes.
he looks quite fit. Like you said, you lost about 30 pounds, 40 pounds.
Yeah, I didn't eat for 3 months.
Yeah.
I had a feeding tube.
And I put them all on. And now look at us.
He was behind me when I was losing it. He was finding it.
All right, I think we got time for like one last one.
We've been hearing stories about your wonderful other half. Could you show her off to us?
Yes. Everybody, Aaron Archuleta. Stand up, stand up, stand up, stand up. Come on.
Stand up! Woo! Come on, Erin! Woo!
Just to make it clear, she is not Japanese also.
All right, one more.
Spend a little time talking about how you eat sushi, starting with the concept of the wave, where you take maybe sashimi first, and then you move to a nigiri, and that's not very spicy, and then move on to a spicy, and then go back down and build it up again.
Wow, thank you. That's a beautiful way to describe it. I've never heard that before.
So I did a sushi workshop in the 80s.
Okay.
In the Kasuri Dye Works in Berkeley, and he taught us about that, and no wasabi, no soy sauce, the whole thing. But he taught that to me, and I thought that was a great way to treat your palate. So I don't know if that's familiar to you at all.
Yes, actually, thank you for bringing that up. Very similar. Actually, it's just like wine tasting when you eat sushi. You can't go wine tasting and go to a winery that is known for their Cabernet Sauvignon and taste that, and then go next door and taste a Sauvignon Blanc, right? Your palate is ruined at that point. You will never get the subtle nuances and certain fruits and flavors because you have tainted your palate because it's too heavy. Sushi is the exact same way. You start very light. You start with the white fish, and then you end with very heavy. You have uni or toro. Some sushi chefs put toro in the middle. I've never really understood that, but to each their own. I mean, there's a million traditional ways to make and eat sushi in Japan also. There's different schools of thought, but yes, you want to start light. If something has a ton of fat in it, uni, toro, anago, anything that's going to be really heavy, if you have that first, that whitefish you have, it might be the best whitefish you've ever had in your entire life, but you won't know, and you won't appreciate it because you've tainted your palate. Sushi is the exact same way. You don't want to eat a bunch of spicy wings or, I don't know, some Taco Bell fire sauce before you have sushi. Keep your palate as clean as possible and build your way up. And each piece will just keep getting better and better and better and better.